Good to know you're still with us. According to a finding by the Progress in International Reading Literacy, which is an international comparative reading assessment that has been carried out every 5 years since 2001, almost 8 out of 10 South African school children are struggling to read well by the age of 10. The study also shows that 81% of South African children aged between 9 and 10 have trouble with reading comprehension. South Africa ranked last out of 57 countries assessed in the Progress in the International Reading Literacy Study, which tested the reading ability of 400,000 students globally in 2021. The study showed that 81% of these children could not read for comprehension in any of the country's 11 official languages. The country's education minister blamed the results on school closures during the COVID-19 pandemic, among other issues. To speak on this, I have Principal of Andile Primary School in Atlantis, that's Mr. Lawrence Punkpole. I also have Dorcas Dube-Lont, National Marketing and Communications Manager of Citizen Leader Lab, Cape Town, South Africa. Thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Let's start with you, Lawrence, sir. What's the common thread in the reaction in the education community in South Africa to this finding?
I think we're very concerned. Should I continue?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Yeah. I think I'm actually very nervous now because we are indeed very concerned of this finding, and if it speaks of third last in 57 countries, it speaks of the dismal effect of the situation in South Africa, and that as teachers this was not the position that we want to be, because I mean our president made it very clear when we had the 2030 vision that by the end of 2030 in South Africa all children must be able to read with understanding. So it is very worrisome and troublesome, and it's an eye-opener of where we are.
Lot of questions for you today, but let me go to Dorcas first. Now, education is one of the single biggest budget expenses for the government of South Africa. So a lot of persons say it is understandable that there are concerns about this rating, not just from the education sector, but across the country. Is the money going to the wrong places?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I must say it's a very interesting question. And in response to that, I'd like to say that we cannot continue throwing money at the problem. Education and literacy has been a crisis in the country for a long time. I think we need to come up with innovative ways on how can we solve this crisis at hand as a country. So I do agree that there may be out-of-the-box solutions that we can think of on how can we solve this problem rather than just throwing funding at this issue. I mean, throwing money at a problem does not solve the problem.
Definitely, it doesn't. I think this is a train of thought you've shared across the board. There was a publication that quoted you saying we need out-of-the-box thinking. Let me speak to Lawrence. I'll come back to you, and you maybe explain a little what this out-of-the-box kind of thinking you're referring to. 8 out of 10 children can't read properly, not in English. Not in any of the 11 languages. Sorry, it's now 12 languages if you add a sign language. Lawrence, I want to ask, what is the language of instruction for the formative years of education? And why does reading have to be a problem if I am to believe, like a lot of persons, it's the mother tongue?
First of all, we need to acknowledge that COVID started in 2020, and in 2020 we had 60 school days. In 2021, when it continued, we had 100 school days. In 2022, we were fortunate enough to have 200 school days. So this does hugely affect the performances of our learners. It limits the teachers the ability and the availability and the time to cement what is needed for our kids to be able to read and read with comprehension and understanding. Mother tongue, on the other hand, is a very, very important. Children need to be taught in their mother tongue, firstly. Secondly, you also stated in the previous clip that our kids in South Africa are performing disability in all 11 languages. So this is obviously a concern that we're looking at. When we speak a bit further, I will share with you exciting plans that we have put in place, exciting programs that teachers are part of, because we do understand that it's absolutely imperative that in the foundation phase, as we say at Avondale Primary School, in the foundation phase, we read to learn. And in the intermediate phase, we learn by reading. So reading is a pivotal role in getting our kids to a point in the intermediate phase and even the senior high schools where they will be able to achieve the academic goals that they set themselves up if they can read effectively. That is really, really a challenge that we have.
Doctors, before we come to the innovations that is required, let us understand where this situation got escalated, because even there is a suggestion that illiteracy also jumped high, away from the challenge with children being unable to read. The education minister, in reaction to this finding, blamed the COVID-19 for slowing down things. What role did the pandemic truly play in slowing down what gains might have been gotten before then?
Thank you for that question. The pandemic definitely was a huge contributor to the education crisis in South Africa, I must say. However, we need to note that the pandemic was just not the only contributor. I mean, pre-COVID, we were sitting at 72% of grade 4 learners not being able to read for comprehension. And this is before the pandemic. And after the pandemic, it went up to 81%. I am sure you know that South Africa is one of the unequal countries in the world. Hence, there is a huge disparity in terms of the haves and the have-nots. And that really affected the learning in terms of moving to learn online. Not every learner has got access to the internet or gadgets, to take part in learning activities. So to a large extent, yes, the pandemic was a contributor. However, there are other factors as well that have contributed to this crisis that we are currently facing.
All right, let's see if we can take some of the problems that have been highlighted, or rather, let's go with you, Dorcas. Let's talk about the innovative measures that you were talking about. You say we should think out of the box. What is this out of the box thinking you reference?
Thanks. So for me, I think it's just a no-brainer. We are in a crisis and we need all hands on deck. So what I mean by out-of-the-box solutions, one of the solutions I can think of on top of my head really is a transdisciplinary approach to this problem, where we have private sector, public sector, and civil society joining hands, working together to see how can we improve the education crisis in the country. For instance, in Leader Lab, what we do is we partner school principals in under-resourced schools, that is quintile 1 to quintile 4, with business leaders in the private sector, really with the aim of capacitating both the school principal and the business leader to be able to, cascade this down to the SMT, to the teachers, and to the learners, really, and communities at large. So for me, I think a transdisciplinary approach to handle and try and tackle this crisis at hand is of paramount importance.
The specific focus for this child disciplinary approach you're suggesting, will it be focusing on improving primarily the reading and comprehension abilities of these young children, or it has to do with the overall education of these children?
So when I speak about the transdisciplinary approach, what I mean is that we have different sectors working together in the education sector. It will focus on education entirely, but literacy is also one of the big contributors to education. So it will definitely tap into the literacy aspect of education. Thank you.
On another suggestion that was put forward by a Stellenbosch University economist, that's Nick Paul. He talked about three explanations, and but I'll take the most striking one. And what he talked about was the foundation phase. Teachers from grades 1 to 3 do not know how to systematically teach reading. Do you agree this is a causal factor? And the other part of the question would be, does the country even have adequate teachers to cover this level of learning? My question is directed to you, Lawrence.
Yes, most definitely. The bar's been raised in South Africa in the sense that when teachers get minimum qualification, they speak of a 4-year at a university, and that's a BA. But you would understand that the qualification of teachers does not equate the experience. Experience is gained in the classroom. So what the Western Cape Education is doing currently, we have a diverse of programs such as the Funda Wonder program for Afrikaans-speaking learners, and the Jolly Phonics programs for English-speaking learners, and it's course as well, the Jolly Phonics, that will focus on restructuring the training of teachers in such a way that they decode the reading ability of the learners, and also come up with very innovative ways of how to present lessons in such a way that it evokes an understanding of children, because children need to read with understanding. Secondly, we're also part of various PLC, that is professional learning communities, where teachers on a two-weekly basis come together and they share best practices in terms of how best they can tackle this huge problem that we're speaking about. Secondly, how best to prepare for lessons where we really provoke the thought processes of learners and get them to read with comprehension. And thirdly, we've also at Avondale Primary School, we've just been identified when we're part of a Back on Track program where the Western Cape Education Department is investing in the development of learners, specifically English and mathematics. And speaking of English, the idea is to afford the opportunity to learners in grade 4 and grade 7, where we just had a systemic test, where we afford those learners to improve on their skills in reading with comprehension. So I would say yes, there is a backlog in terms of where we are now, but we are excitedly busy with retraining our teachers, getting together on a bi-weekly basis, training especially novice teachers, because we must also understand that I'm at a very relatively young age, and I'm almost at the exit point in my educational career, and most of our youngsters coming in now will need the type of support in terms of experience. So we in our professional learning communities, we have your experienced teachers blending in with your less experienced teachers so that we can also share best practices. And then last, I would also want to say that Department of Basic Education is spending a lot of money on the literacy books for learners that is very colorful, very illustrative, and is very provocative and thought-provoking in terms of the questioning. So I would want to believe that the education authorities is really has identified that we do have a problem in terms of reading and writing in South Africa, especially in the foundation phase, but that we're really going on with a program that we hope that within the next 3 years, given the stability of the country in terms of our recovery of COVID, that we will claw back away in terms of improving on our vision of having all kids being able to read with understanding in 2030.
Would you agree to suggestions that you need more teachers? More teachers need to be recruited to the foundation level while other aspects are being improved?
Speaking to me?
Yes, Lawrence. I'm just catching up from where you...
At the moment in the Western Cape, we also have an initiative from the department where we have just employed 18 assistants, and these are kids that are matric, that have passed matric, that have a good reading ability, and their primary focus is also to assist the teacher in the classroom with enabling the kids to get more time in the reading, to read on a one-on-one, to demonstrate in terms of reading, then also to engage on a one-on-one basis with our learners to try to get them to understand reading. At the moment, we have a ratio of 1 to 37 in terms of our kids into a primary school, a grade 1, 2, and 3 teacher. It would be ideal that we have it at a bit of a lower rate, because then it would afford our learners also the opportunity to get more specific and individual attention. But we also know the economics of the country. It would be ideally to have more teachers employed, but we must also be careful that, as my learned colleague says, throwing money and throwing teachers at it, we must ask ourselves, does that solve the problem, rather than to get those teachers equipped, rather to gain them necessary experience. And I think as teachers, we are generally energized to claw back the losses that we had in the past.
All right, Douglas, let me come to you. Another suggestion as to identifying a problem and looking for a solution. One writer suggests that poor reading among South African children highlights the need for what he describes as decolonization in book publishing, teaching, and policy implementation. I want to focus on one part, and that's the reading materials. Is there a debt of reading materials at the foundation phase? Are you aware? If yes, are you aware of anything being done to address it? If not, or if yes, how can it be better?
Thanks for that question, Felicity. I think that question was going to be valuable to be answered by Principal Lawrence, but I'll go for it. So in my view, I think the reading material is in abundance, but maybe accessibility is an issue here. And like I said, that in South Africa, we are an unequal country. We've got the haves and the have-nots. So accessibility remains an issue. And how can we solve this problem? I think it's for us to work together. So we've got organizations that focus on literacy only, organizations like the one Principal Lawrence spoke about, Funda One Day. It looks at literacy. We've got Nali Bali, we've got Shine Literacy, and all these organizations just focus on literacy in the country. Why not come together and come up with solutions that will inspire and aspire our future leaders as well as our learners? So with Citizen Leader Lab, what we do is we partner with principals and business leaders at the principal level. But however, we believe that this cascades down to the school teachers, to the SMT, to the communities, and to the learners. Hence, I am saying that I think working together is a solution that we can all come together and thrive for.
All right, over to you, Principal Lawrence. What's your thought on the issue of reading materials? Do we have a debt of these materials for children at the foundation level? Okay, we will try and reconnect. I think the network has hacked him off. Let's just take a short break. We'll be right back. Don't go away. We're still reviewing the findings of a global report that suggests 8 out of 10 children in South Africa struggle with reading and understanding what has been read. I still have Lawrence Pongpol, Principal, Andile Primary, Atlantics, Western Cape. I also have Dorcas Dube-Long, National Marketing and Communications Manager of Citizen Lab, Cape Town, South Africa. Thank you both for sticking with us. Before we went on that break, Dorcas, you spoke on the debt of reading materials and foundation, creating a better foundation for the children. So I want to put that same question to Lawrence. Lawrence, if you can hear me, I'd like your 2 cents on the question of the debt of reading materials. Do we have a debt of reading materials at the foundation phase that you're aware of? If yes, what do you think is being done to address it?
Very much for that question. As I previously said, that the Western Cape education programs, and I would want to focus on the Funda One and the Jolly Phonics program, because these are programs are strategically set up to assist in the learning of how to read with comprehensions. What the Education Department has also done, there's also available a range of books for learners. Together with this, as I said previously, we also have the assistant program where assistants come in and also assist in trying to promote reading amongst children, promote the love of reading amongst children, promote the ability for them to then read, also with comprehension. I think Elmwood Primary is a very fortunate school in the sense that in that teachers have whiteboard data projectors. So the access to the internet also plays a pivotal role where children can also enjoy reading collectively as a group, like guided reading, and where they get illustrations on an electronic platform. As my my learned friend states, yes, we are a country with disparate. On Avenue Primary, as an example, I would say that if we do not come back in terms of how we improve on the reading and writing, it will really be our own fault, because we have different programs as the Funda Wanda. We have learning communities where teachers engage on a bi-weekly basis to catch up on what they're doing, share best practices.
All right, let's see. Let's ask Dorcas this question. We'll come back to you, Lawrence. The network seems to be a bit fishy at the moment. Alongside Morocco and Egypt, South Africa was one of the only 3 African countries that participated in the assessments to monitor trends in literacy and reading comprehension for the age bracket we're talking about, 0 to 10 years. Would it be fair to say that maybe South Africa could be doing better than other African countries, as shown by their willingness to participate in such a global study?
Yes, so thank you for that question. Yes, definitely South Africa could be doing better. I mean, I'll suggest that before we go to international standards, why not start nationally? You know, it only makes sense that we start with national assessments before we go to international assessments. So we'll never know how we're doing as a nation and what kind of benchmarks are they looking at internationally before we look at ourselves nationally. So in short, what I wanted to say is that maybe we need to establish that we need to have assessments nationally before we move to the international platform.
Okay, Lawrence, the study also showed that overall girls were ahead of boys in their reading achievement in nearly all of the assessed countries. But the gender gap seemed to have narrowed in most recent testing. Can this be improved upon to balance the scale, where you have, an evaluation that shows there is equal interest and abilities between girls and boys?
Thank you. I think this is very challenging in the sense, and very exciting also, in the sense that we need to know, when we entice a learner to read, we have to entice him in terms of what he's interested in. So be it a girl, I would want to believe that if the reading materials are structured in such and more eager and more interested and more excited to read, and so too for boys. So as teachers, what I would how I would navigate this is that I would when I do teach reading, I would carefully select reading materials that would provoke thought processes of girls, interest of girls as well as boys, for the simple reason of getting them interested in it, and so that when they are interested, they will continue to read or will continue the lessons along those lines of the interest of the learner, I feel that it will enhance the ability of our kids to do better in terms of reading with understanding.
This question I'll ask you, Lawrence, and then I would like to get your thoughts as well, Dorcas. Improving literacy outcome, experts suggest, requires not just resource inputs, learning or other infrastructure. It also includes leisure reading for both teachers and children at home and in the classroom. My question basically is, what is the role of parents in encouraging leisure reading at home? Do they have this ability? Lawrence?
I was fortunate enough to listen to the report in the South African news yesterday, and one of the experts, I can't remember the professor's name, she profoundly, constantly stated that culture at home, how would you be able to expedite it at school? You must remember, at a very young age, children must be exposed to reading, and reading for fun, reading for enjoyment, reading for leisure, and this starts at home. So it's absolutely of developing the kid long term for reading with understanding. If the parent plays that role in terms of spending time to engage with the learner in reading by having reading as I believe we will do much better as a country, because at the end of the day, the parent is the most pivotal part in the child's life, and he or she needs to accept the counter responsibility. At Andile Primary, we believe that and if one of those three parties don't come to the party, then the progress of the learner will not be at the level that it is. So, yes, parents play actually the most pivotal role, because they're the first person that sees the child. And if we can cement the mannerism and the habit, get kids to love reading, that will just be further nurtured at the primary schools in grades R to 3.
Yes, over to you. Do you think parents are doing enough to encourage leisure reading? Since experts have said this is one way that can really help.
I don't think as parents we are doing enough. We need to create a culture of reading. Like charity begins at home, like the saying goes. So I think that parents have got a role to play. They've got more to do. I'd like to encourage parents really, to read to their children, and also allow the children to read to them. We just need to advocate for reading at home and creating a culture of reading in our homes as well as a nation. Let's just create that culture of reading.
All right, Lawrence, despite all the evidence that reading books are a low-cost but effective way of improving education outcome, South Africa seems to be far from having accessible and affordable African language reading materials. The country has 11 languages. Yes, there is the primary one where children learn, that they learn with, but do you believe that there is a dearth of African language reading material? If yes, why, and how can we bridge the gap?
You rightfully say that South Africa has 11 languages, and unfortunately, English forms is actually one of the primary languages that we use. I certainly believe that kids need to be taught in their mother tongue. And it is imperative that kids, when they're taught in their mother tongue, at a very young age, they must be exposed to reading materials that is in the mother tongue, because it's only then that they can excel at a very good level. So yes, we do have a backlog. Yes, we do have a shortage of learning material or reading materials in all. in getting much more materials for learners in their language, because it would only make it very much easier for kids to as the previous speaker said.
Okay, I think we do have a challenge with Lawrence's network. We'll keep trying to get his thoughts because it is very, very important. Dorcas, what's your 2 cents on the subject of having more reading materials in African languages?
I share Principal Lawrence's sentiments that mother tongue language is very efficient. I mean, a child really understands what they're reading if they can also correlate to the language that they're reading it in. Unfortunately, in South Africa, English is the medium of teaching in all our provinces. I suggest maybe, how about if we try that each province focuses on a different language in terms of decoding the messaging to the learners. Just maybe we could curb this literacy crisis that we have at hand.
Lack of suitable reading materials. There's the documented evidence of inadequate infrastructures in school. Things like toilets and, basic necessities. How is this contributing to the crisis that we're talking about? Dorcas, the question is for you.
Yes, thank you. So a conducive learning environment is key, really, to any learner. We cannot expect our learners to perform well while they are still using pit latrines, while they don't have food, to eat during break time, while they're using a broken desk. So we need to create a conducive environment for our learners. And we look into the different phases of how can we do this? Water and sanitation. That should just be, a no-brainer that our learners need water and sanitation. They can't be using pit latrines in 2023. So a conducive learning environment is very important to let our kids, do well in terms of education and literacy.
All right, Lawrence, you seem to have a lot of optimism as to the efforts being put in by the government. But from your purely academic background, somebody who has been in the education sector, what would you suggest as immediate actions that all stakeholders must put in to improve the score? I mean, this study comes up every 5 years, so that by the next global rating, we will have South Africa inch upwards in ranking.
A very good question. I first of all think that all stakeholders. Secondly, it is unacceptable. We cannot be the third largest country here on the scale of 1 to 57. So all stakeholders must accept accountability and responsibility for that. That we need to work collaboratively in ensuring that we reach the benchmark. 2030 is still. It's imperative that we get teachers trained on a constant basis, that we engage one another in best practices, that we look at the socioeconomic conditions of our learners, because that is also pivotal, that is also important, that we afford learners all learners the ability to have access to good reading materials where they are freely accessible, that we get our teachers energized and excited to tackle this huge problem, because it is unacceptable that we rank so low, and that eight out of 10 children speaks out of the fact that only 2 can read and write, and that is not acceptable. So collaboratively, we need to work together. We need to get our teachers trained. We need to have a projected targets that we need to reach, and we need to monitor this on a constant basis, so that if we take the 5 years, we break it up into 6-month chunks to assess where we are. Are we on the right track? If not, how do we tweak things so that we get where we are and not wait for 5 years to come. And lastly, we need to engage our parents. We need to engage our parents, the important role that they play in ensuring that we build a learning culture and a reading culture at home, so that our kids at a very early age, 1.5, 2 years old, are exposed to reading for leisure, reading for excitement, and later on we build up at schools where we read for understanding.
All right, Lawrence, the network really interrupted your submission, but I did get the heart of it. It is a collaborative effort. Dorcas, your thoughts, I mean, on improving reading and comprehension skills in young children generally, aside from, you know, everybody pitching in and doing their part. What other things do you think can be done in the journey to improve reading and comprehension skills?
Thank you. So I do share the same sentiments as Principal Lawrence. Parents and the nation at large, we need to create a culture of reading, where reading is celebrated, where reading is esteemed, where reading is honored and promoted. Reading should be at the core of the curriculum, as it plays a role in the child's development. And it should just be placed as a paramount importance. So what I'm saying is that parents and the nation at large, we need to create a culture of reading. Secondly, like I said, we need to work across sectors, so a cross-sector collaboration between private, public, and civil society, coming together and working together towards improving the literacy levels in South Africa. And maybe, like I said previously, before we go to international rankings, why not do national rankings to see where we stand as a country throughout our 9 provinces? And then once we establish that and we understand the trends that are happening internationally, then we can move to the international rankings. Because it does not make sense really to move to international rankings before we look at our own national rankings.
You do have a point there. Lawrence, I mean, I have to ask you this one question, and that is your advice to parents in the quest to improve reading and comprehension. What more would you suggest that they do in this quest?
Oh, yeah, thank you. When we start, reading starts at a very young age. I want to believe that our parents should instill the habit of reading to their children, bedtime story, yes, and then when reading, to just pose small questions that will provoke the thinking of the learner.
All right. Thank you very much, Lawrence and Dorcas, for speaking with us. And to you, our esteemed viewer, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.